Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the Jakks Pacific Road Champs Battlebots Battle Bashers. And the specific figures we are looking at today are Minion, Vlad the Impaler, Alpha Raptor, Backlash, Atomic Wedgie, Ronin, El Diablo, and Biohazard. And these are all toys based off the, at the time of their release, Comedy Central show Battlebots, the original incarnation of Battlebots, which is now back on TV on ABC, which makes me incredibly happy. I competed in Battlebots for a few years, the high school tournament they used to have back in the day. I had a 120-pound robot and went off and fought kids from other high schools around the country. And I also built smaller fighting robots in the range of 150 grams up to 3 pounds. And recently I've gotten back into doing that quite a bit, which is why my reviews have been a little slow to come out lately, because kind of obsessed right now. But I figured to tie into my Battlebots hype, episodes are airing Thursday nights at 8. So for the next couple Thursdays, let's look at some of these older Battlebots action figures, because why the hell not? Now, I believe there were 3 different waves of these figures. I'm having a little trouble finding accurate information on what was released when. I know some of these are from what I believe is the second series, where they added some kind of battle damage look to them. And I know I'm also missing Bad Attitude and maybe one other one in this series, but I'll take the ones I have, we'll take a look at them, and see how they stack up. So each one of these Battlebots toys is a really simple gimmick, but to me kind of an enjoyable one. They all have wheels on them, so if you take them and kind of wind up the motors in them, they'll take off. And my background is curved here, which is why Minion just did a little loop. But they'll usually go in a straight line. You kind of have to charge them up quite a bit to really get them going, and I think age has not been kind to these guys. But the basic idea is you take 2, you put them on opposite sides of whatever you're playing on. They did make an arena for these, and you launch them at each other. And then when they impact, like you can see the raised up wedge section here on Minion. So if you hit that, you get battle damage. So Minion's side wheel pods come off, and the cover comes off on his saw back here, which I think is pretty cool. It's a simple little gimmick, but enjoyable. Minion also kind of has a secondary gimmick. If you look when I rotate the wheels, the saw blade here in the back will sometimes rotate. Now, it should work a little better than this. You can see the belt here is kind of caught in the trough of the weapon. It's a little O-ring or something that's supposed to go around the pulley up here, but they didn't align it properly. The part on the toy that has the other end of the belt is way here over on what's now the left side. The pulley's very centered, so the belt will never stay on the pulley, so you always kind of have this awkward friction drive from the side of it. So it doesn't work great. Really, you're never going to be able to fairly send Minion in with his saw going anyway, since his trigger point is here on the back. But overall, I think these toys are some of the best things I've ever seen Jakks Pacific do, and that may just be kind of biased on my part, but I think they got a really good amount of detail onto a little figure like this, and most of their humanoid-looking figures usually just suck. I believe this is based off Minion's look in either Series 1 or 2 from Comedy Central. It's all pretty early designs for these robots. We do have the 6 wheels here on the side with the blue hubs in them. You can see some of the blue innards of Minion there, the Team Cool Robots logo on the back. Nicely detailed bits there on the saw cover. The saw cover does tend to pop open. Doesn't really stay down the way it should. Saw blade here has the red teeth on it, which is how it should look. And overall, I think just a pretty solid looking little figure. It's all hard plastic, but the wheels are kind of a softer rubber, which is also nice. And if you are familiar with the current show, but maybe not so much with the old show, the builder of Minion, Christian Carlberg, is the guy who now has Overdrive. Next up, we'll take a look at Vlad the Impaler. And if Vlad the Impaler wasn't one of the most successful Battlebots in Battlebots history, I honestly don't think they would have made it into a toy because, well, it's a pretty boring looking action figure. It's basically a silver box with tapered edges up here at the top, and that's it. We got some rivets here on the side. We got the forks here in the front, which they have kind of pointing straight out. In combat, these would actually be scraping the ground and then flip up to flip opponents. They did detail out his self-righting mechanism up here at the top, and he even got a sponsor on here, which I know is how a lot of people sold companies on sponsoring their robots back in the day. It might appear on a toy. And then Vlad has the same gimmick where you can motorize him on the ground, just like Minion has. And then as you can see, as I struggle while holding it, if you push in the forks on Vlad, The center part here, which does have a little bit of mechanical looking detail in it, pops up and then it puts the armor pieces all flipped open like he's spontaneously combusted. Not the best damage feature, and the inside is a little lacking, but it's still a fun little gimmick. Next up we have Alpha Raptor, and if you might have guessed from the current season, this is Chuck Pitzer's old robot. He now has Ghost Raptor, and this is part of that series, what I think is series 2, where they added some battle damage. You can see these almost burnt looking marks on it and scratches all over the robot. I kind of like the aesthetic. I'm a little torn on whether I prefer this or the pristine looking robots, but it is a neat thing to kind of mix up with the rest of them. Now you can see here Alpha Raptor has 4 wheels. They actually do spin, but he's really using these 2 rubber ones underneath to actually do the rolly bits, the motorized rolly bit or whatever you want to call that. They did some good detail here. We have the bits of the axle coming off the wheel here. We have rivets all over the top. The lifting fork is really well detailed. And if you bash Alpha Raptor, you can see his back wheel pods kind of break apart and flip down. The arm pops up and then also moves these little pieces of armor out of the way. I kind of wish these little arms weren't here. These arms here are what make the armor pieces jump up. And I'll have this complaint with another robot down the line, but it kind of would have been nice to have a way to use the lifting arm in the bash. Like when it actually hits something, it doesn't just break apart and we actually get some lifting action with our little robots. But overall, cool little piece. Next up, we have Backlash, which is the little brother to Nightmare, which is still currently competing on the ABC TV show, and one of my favorite robots of all time. I love the big vertical discs. That's actually what my big 120-pound robot ended up getting for a weapon, because I love this design so much. But they did a decent job of bringing Backlash to life here. We have the wedge going here in the back. We have all the bolts going down the side of Backlash, and also on top we have his logo there in the middle. The As Seen on TV logo, which I think makes this definitely the season 2 version. The holes in the disc, the original pattern that Backlash had before they updated it later on. We have the weapon motor pod sitting here on the side, and we do have the ability, when you move the wheel, you can see the blade will spin, which is pretty cool. Works much better than Minions. And Backlash does go in blade first, so you'd be revving him up. He comes in with the blade spinning full force, and then you hit your opponent, and Backlash's back cracks open. So we get this really cartoonish crack down the middle. You see a little bit of internals there. Cool little gimmick. Next up, we have Atomic Wedgie, one of the super heavyweights, I think from season 2. And I think they did a really good job on this one. They have the Atomic Wedgie, Atomic logo here on the front. Very bright and cool looking. I think it's probably why they picked this one for an action figure. We have the treads here at the top and also on the bottom, which is pretty darn accurate to how the real robot was. They didn't like continue them here in the back or anything. I think these little greenish pieces here actually stuck out on the real version of the robot, but they did a really good job replicating all the kind of mechanical look that Atomic Wedgie had. Then we have the hot pink and neon yellow trifoils here. When you spin the robot, when it's heading towards its opponent, those will spin upwards, just like they would in the real robot, which I think is pretty cool. With this, there's a very obvious trigger point here on the front, the bright neon yellow little lip of plastic coming out of the gray. And when you hit that, pretty big explosion. 2 wheel pods pop off the side, and then the middle section of the wedge flies up. But honestly, out of all of these, just in terms of functionality, I think this is one of my favorites. It's very bright and colorful, which sets it apart from a lot of the other ones in the line, and its damage factor is fun, and the little blade spinning is a nice touch. Next up is Ronin. This is another one that has the battle damage look. We see the darker spots here in the armor, scratches up in the front. Now, like I said with Alpha Raptor, I'm glad I have a few of these, just because with a lot of silver robots or grayish silver robots, it'd probably be pretty boring to have them all with no real paint variation. So Ronin's a nice touch. Though Ronin does have a nice pop of color back here with his flags coming off the back. They're little pieces of plastic that clip onto these poles. The poles are all interconnected here at the bottom and peg in, so you can pop these off if you didn't want them. But why not have them flying off the back of the robot? They did a pretty good job highlighting the little gas engine here, the big saw blade or whatever this was up at the front, and the dual tread pods, and the little wedge here in the back. Overall, really nicely detailed. Ronin's another one that when you're moving forward, the blade is supposed to spin, but that's not happening here, so that's a little bit of a bummer. I can't remember if this ever worked, if it broke on me recently, or if it was always like this. I really don't remember. But when you do crash Ronin into his opponent, his tread pods fall down, which I guess if it was on the floor, would mean the rest of the body pops up, which with this wedge here on the back isn't really a whole lot of movement. It just kind of pops up slightly. So a little lacking here on the action features. Next up, another one of my absolute favorites, El Diablo, who I believe was a finalist in Season 2, and his builder has Razorback in the current season of Battlebots. And this one, once again, very unique, very cool looking robot, which is why I'm glad they made it. I think this is also that second series. We do see some of that darkness coming in here and some scratches, which really adds to the look of El Diablo. We have the tread plate detailed there on the side. We actually have the rubber treads here on either side that will move, though once again it is using these wheels here on the bottom to move it along. There's little horns here, which I don't think actually ever went into the arena with. I think these were just decoration before the fight, but they're a soft rubber, which is cool. You see the little devil emblem here in the back, and then we have the skull with the hinged wedge and the spikes coming off of it, and then we have the drum up here in the front with all the little teeth on it, and if you spin the wheels, that gets some really nice spinning action to it. And then if you bash into El Diablo's drum, the tread pods pop up, and then you can't really see it too well here in the middle, but this midsection does pop up a little bit as well. Not too grandiose there, but the treads popping up are much more obvious. And last but not least, if I said Vlad the Impaler is one of the most successful BattleBots of all time, here's one of the other most dominant BattleBots of all time, Biohazard. Once again, kind of a boring robot, but very iconic in BattleBots. We do have all of his sponsors here on the edges. We have the bolts up here on the top, lifting arm there in the front. There is this kind of big bulge here, and I assume this is because they couldn't fit the moving mechanism into such a low-profile toy, which Biohazard in reality is a very, very short robot. It's I think about 4 inches tall, so I guess they just couldn't fit all that in such a small sized body. We once again have just the 2 rubber wheels at the bottom, no actual wheels for the robot itself. And then when you smash into Biohazard's lifting arm, you probably shouldn't have your hand in the way. But the armor pieces will pop aside, and then we actually do get a fair recreation of Biohazard's 4-bar linkage system that makes the arm kind of go up and out at the same time. I definitely appreciate that they took the time to make that assembly rather than just having it pop straight up, even though at the end of the day that's really all it does, but it's more accurate than I would have thought they would try. And then we can see Biohazard, just like Alpha Raptor, has these 2 bars in the lifting arm that help pop the armor off. The front pieces then go under the back pieces and that pulls them up as well.
So the overall realization with these has to be that they're a toy for kids and for people like me who are BattleBots obsessed and incredibly immature. But I think these are actually quite a bit of fun. There are new modern BattleBots toys coming out fairly soon from Hexbugs, and they're going to be remote controlled. I think some may actually have like a built-in controller where they're tethered controlled. But something like this is very, very simplistic, but fairly satisfying to play with. So I'm actually going to give them a recommend. They're not nearly as sophisticated as a lot of the action figures I bring to this review table and take pictures of. That doesn't really matter. I enjoy them. They definitely have a coolness factor to them. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, box is locked, the lights are on, it's Outside the Box review time. That probably would work better if there wasn't the word box in that statement twice. But whatever. Bye.